Hey there, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Colorado Conversations. I'm Drew Engelbart, joined by a very special guest that went to my high school. And I say my high school, our high school, Rocky Mountain High School up in Fort Collins. He's a Lobo just like I am, and this is really cool. Scotty Milan. Remember the name, because this is an upcoming NASCAR-ARCA driver, and he's making his debut right here in Colorado, coming up in just a little bit. Scotty, thanks for hanging out with us here.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got to ask, first of all, you're a hometown kid, obviously grew up in Fort Collins just like I did. How did you get involved in kind of the NASCAR, the racing business?
So it started when I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
My dad and my grandpa, they've always raced. My dad, he's won some races at that Colorado National, so is my grandpa. And my dad bought me a quarter midget, and it all started there. We raced over at, it's right over by CNS. We raced at a quarter midget track over there, and it just progressed from there. Won some national championships in the quarter midgets, and then went to micros, which is dirt racing, and that's where I've been since, is micros and sprint cars. And now it's kind of going back to that asphalt versus, you know, I was in the dirt game. So.
That's amazing. It goes from, you know, describe that car that you started in. Is it just like a little, almost like a buggy?
It's kind of like, it looks like a go-kart kind of, but I mean, it's on a different level. I mean, we're circle track, and those cars were expensive too. You know, you got to buy tires, engines. I mean, it was very competitive. There was, I feel like, millions of laps in those cars, and traveled everywhere for that.
That's awesome. Right now, let's talk about what you're doing right now, because obviously we're talking May 23rd, the big Colorado National Speedway debut, which I'm sure you're excited about. I'm excited to see how you do, but you've been racing these 410 sprint cars. Is that what they are? Kind of describe what that is.
So a 410 sprint car is about 1,400 pounds, 900 horsepower, and you're racing on dirt. I mean, you're side by side, you're entering the corner full speed, 100 plus miles an hour.
Wow.
You don't have any fenders, so it's open wheel car. You have a big wing on the top to keep downforce, keep the car on the ground. I mean, they're nuts. They're probably one of the craziest cars you could drive.
And obviously it's going to be, you know, a bit different going from dirt to asphalt, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And you mentioned, you know, going around corners, going 100 miles an hour. And I've seen some of those races. You guys are all packed in so close together. We've got Mom over here. I'm sure she just watches the races like this.
Yeah.
What's Mom's reaction when you're out there racing?
Oh, she's very nervous. You know, it's nerve-wracking, because a lot of times that she's gone, I've not done so well. I've crashed out, and she's got to see the worst of it, so that doesn't help.
Well, you mentioned it's almost like, you know, a family heritage, what you guys do. It's in the family blood. It's racing. So what was it like for you, maybe that first crash that you got in? Is it more normal because you kind of saw your dad and your grandpa in that world? Or, I mean, I'm sure it still was not fun, but it kind of describe what it was like, you know, being in the first crash or being in your first race. Does it kind of just come with the Milan name?
Yeah, I feel like since I've been doing it for so long, it's just very normal to me to just start a race. But, you know, crashing is still not very normal. You know, when you wreck, you close your eyes and you wake up, and you don't really go to sleep, but you're
just hoping everything's still attached to your body.
Yeah, you're just holding on. I've bent the steering wheel on my race car from holding on so tight, and
that's wild. And you're talking, I mean, to include, you know, going back to when you first started when you were 8 years old, you've been in hundreds of different races, and is it all around the country too?
Yeah, so it's all over. I've probably, I mean, I don't even know. I've probably been to most of the states, probably at least 40 states racing.
Just to race?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's, I mean, you started off with smaller cars, and now you're building up. Was the goal always, you know, obviously NASCAR, and if you're not familiar, NASCAR-ARCA is, you know, kind of like the minor leagues that you see at baseball, the way you work your way up to professionals. I mean, Scotty's still a young kid in his early 20s. Was that the ultimate goal, or what was your goal when you started? Or was it just like, I have to do this because Dad did it and Grandpa did it?
So the goal, I wouldn't say at first was NASCAR. I really wanted to go to the dirt stuff, and then, you know, opportunities change, you know, things just change, and I would say now the goal is NASCAR. It wasn't you know, always that, but it's like, you know, opportunities have came up to where it's like, oh wow, I actually do get this opportunity, and like that is awesome, and I'm very excited. And you know, it's not that I didn't want to do it, I just thought it was unreachable.
Yeah.
And now it's right in front of me. So
that's incredible. I mean, I'm super excited for you, and I mean, just to think, you watch some of these NASCAR races, and we have them on Fox. You know, Talladega, obviously everyone knows about that, but just even a race in Phoenix or wherever it may be, you have hundreds of thousands of people at these racetracks. Obviously there's good money involved for the drivers and the team, so to think that, you know, you're working your way towards that is absolutely incredible. But I also understand why you'd say, you know, as a kid, that's not achievable. That's just, you know, mile high. So that's absolutely incredible that you're getting closer. So you've always had a passion for racing, obviously. You'll notice on his shirt, too, he's got Scott's Automotive there. That's a family business? Yeah,
so that's my dad's automotive business. He's got 12 locations. Him and my mom has always sponsored me, and this is the business that's always been on the car. And today's actually his birthday. Shout out to him.
Happy birthday, Dad. And obviously, it probably helps the fact that you know, are driving cars now, but you probably spent some time under some hoods and in and around the cars just growing up in the shop, right?
Yeah, so before the auto repair, my dad had a junkyard. So I grew up at the junkyard driving the forklift, tearing cars apart, you know, just doing anything to be in the way, pretty much. And to this day, I still work on cars. Yesterday, I was doing an engine job. I still got to finish that up. And
is that kind of a trade-off? Dad's like, hey, I'll sponsor you in your car, but you need to come work.
Well, me and him, we have our own little side business where we buy and sell cars. So I buy them, put engines in them, and
fix them up a little bit, kind of like remodeling a house like you see on all those HGTV shows. That sounds like a fun gig, too.
Yep.
All right, so I can't wait for this. It's coming up Saturday, May 23rd at 6 o'clock. It's a night event. CNS, you mentioned CNS. If you're not familiar with that, it's what all the insiders, all the cool people that are in racing world like me call Colorado National Speedway. Tickets start at just $16, $17, so it's not too expensive to go to, and we have a hometown kid to cheer for, which is amazing. Are you nervous? Are you excited? Like, what are the feelings going in? Because I imagine you've been to CNS how many times, but have you ever raced on the asphalt there? Talk about that.
So I've never raced there, but I have been there multiple times, and you know, I feel pretty confident. You know, Jonathan and Strike Mama Racing, we went and tested with them, and I got to feel for the car already, and we're gonna go test again before a couple days before. So I feel very confident. I feel like, you know, it's super exciting. I'm gonna be racing my hometown. My dad's won some legend car races there, and so is my grandpa as well. So it's something, you know, I feel like I'm very confident and comfortable, but we'll see how we match up with those other guys. You know, it's not something I'm gonna expect to win, but I expect to still do really good.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're not nervous, but I'm sure there'll be some butterflies as you're getting ready, you know, to get going there. And I think it's so cool that, you know, you just grew up around it, and your dad's been involved. I'm sure you're gonna have a nice little cheering section at CNS that night. You got some friends and family that'll be there.
Yeah, I will have a lot, or what I think is gonna be a lot of people, but you know, it's just, I've always raced out of town, so everyone always asks me, you know, if you ever have a race close by, I'll make sure I go. So it's like, you know, everyone gets their time to come watch me, and I get to perform for them. So
that's awesome. Well, let's go all cheer him on. It's our hometown kid. You know, there's going to be a number of racers there, but we've got one here from Fort Collins that we can all cheer for. So I'm excited for that. All right, we are just getting started on this episode of Colorado Conversations. We'll be right back with Scotty Milan making his NASCAR-ARCA debut coming up in a couple days here in just a bit. Stay with us. Hey guys, welcome back to this episode of Colorado Conversations. I'm Drew Engelbart. I think this is such a fun episode for me because this is Scotty Milan here. Remember the name. I know there's a lot of NASCAR fans out there that watch us here on Fox, but it's also cool because we went to the same high school. We're Rocky Mountain legends right here. Rocky Mountain High School up in Fort Collins. I know his mother went there, his father went there.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. You've got your dad's Scott's Automotive right there on your shirt. I know he's a big sponsor of you. So look for Scotty. He's a NASCAR-ARCA driver, and if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like the minor leagues of what would be Major League Baseball. You have your minor leagues, and NASCAR, you have ARCA, which is one of the minor leagues. Kind of the way you work your way up into the big leagues. So Scotty's just, what, 22, 23 years old? 23 years old, so he's still a youngin' going after it. I love it. Since you're a youngin', you grew up Fort Collins just like I did. I'm sure there's some, maybe even parents out there, if kids are watching and they say, my kid's interested in that kind of thing. What would your advice be? I know you started when you were 8, but what would the advice be for some of the parents and kids out there?
I would recommend, going to watch and learn, as a parent, learning about, what cars to get into first, what direction you want to go, dirt, asphalt, figure out who has the top-notch cars, who's winning the races, and go from there, and start off with better equipment. That always helps. Have a good teacher, because I had a good teacher.
You did.
And
2 good teachers, right?
Yeah. Well, we had another guy come help us, and that's all the difference. Having the right person, definitely setting up the car and wanting to work with you.
I think so, and that can be similar to any sport. I played baseball at Rocky Mountain High School, and you have teachers from a young age that kind of teach you into that. So I love that. You mentioned that you really started in kind of these smaller cars, and then recently you've done some 410 sprint car races, which is on dirt. Dirt to asphalt, is there a major, there's got to be, I know nothing about racing just to set that up. You're going 100 miles an hour on dirt. There has to be a major difference in driving on the 2 surfaces, right?
Yeah, so with asphalt, you're like on a 3/8 track like CNS, you're going into the corner a lot slower than you are in a sprint car. Not saying that like on a big track, but like with a sprint car, you're full throttle to go into the corner. You use the gas pedal to steer the car. Like the rear tires just light up, and that's how you turn the corner in a sprint car. But with asphalt, you gotta slow down, use the brake, hit your marks. It's just a different technique of racing. But where I started was on asphalt, so I feel like when I went and tested the car, I still have it.
You still have that experience.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, I grew up playing baseball. Friends played basketball, football. You practice. That's what you do. You have the coach out there blowing the whistle. How do you practice in your sport? And obviously you've got a major race coming up here soon, your debut at CNS. How do you practice for something like that? It's not like you can take your Jeep Grand Cherokee out to the corner and just start doing laps around the Rocky Mountain High School parking lot.
Yeah, so we are going to test I think 3 days before at a different.
And you can do that at the track, or does
No, I'm doing it at a different track. I forgot the name of it, but it's it's very similar to Colorado National, and get a whole day of good laps put down. That's a couple days before. It's just it's tough because like in a sprint car, I get 0 practice. You get maybe 2 laps of practice before you're racing.
You can't just go out to the track anytime you want, so it's not like other sports you get to practice every day.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare? Is it just these days before leading up to it?
You have to really dial the car in the days before and just have everything figured out. You have to be on point. It's basically a mind game, and you got to have the right people. The crew chief has to know what's going on. The driver needs to know what's going on. It all has to work together to make a good turnout for the night.
Well, I think you do have the right people in your corner, obviously, with your dad and your grandfather, the long lineage. We're talking about NASCAR and ARCA, this race that you're going to be in coming up on Saturday, May 23rd there at Colorado National Speedway. Did you have a favorite driver growing up? Was it Dad, or did you have a favorite NASCAR driver?
I always have liked Kyle Larson. Okay. So Kyle Larson, he raced in dirt, and now he's running, Cup car. He's very dominant, very good driver. And before that, it was mainly just dirt drivers like Tony Stewart and those guys. Tony Stewart, he's not running dirt anymore. He's NHRA, but. A lot of those guys that did run asphalt ran dirt before. It's a good learning lesson with the speed and, figuring out the car and where at on the track.
I was just going to ask you, you look at how they kind of rose through the ranks, which is what you're trying to do right now. Do a lot of those guys start on dirt like you have and work their way up to the asphalt? Is that typically how it goes?
I do see a lot of guys do that, and like Carson Hocevar, he just won the last Cup race, and we bought his old quarter midgets, so cool. That I started out in his cars, so. He's always ran asphalt, and look at him. He's
worked
winning.
Out pretty good for him.
So it's not just about running dirt before, but a lot of guys that are in that came from dirt. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you're well on your way. We're running out of time on this episode of Colorado Conversations, but we have one more segment coming up. I'm going to talk to him about the endurance inside of those cars, because a lot of people think, oh, you're just making turns, but then you hear from some of these drivers and what they go through for hours-long races. We've got to talk more about that. It'll be fun to get an inside look, and then we'll have one more recap of Scott's Automotive, obviously the family business there, and a big race that I'm looking forward to watching. Obviously, Scotty's debut coming up here May 23rd. We'll talk about that when we come back, so stay with us. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Colorado Conversations. I have to say this is the final segment of what's been my favorite episode so far, because we've got a couple Rocky Mountain Lobo graduates sitting at the table right here up at Fort Collins High School. Pretty cool. So I heard the story about Scotty Milan through Shelby Park Management, which there's a whole lot that goes into owning a team and a race car and all that. And I'm so glad I got to hear this story because, one, we've got a hometown kid that's making his NASCAR-ARCA debut, which, again, if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like minor leagues leading up to, obviously, the big leagues would be NASCAR. So he's working his way up, and it's happening right here in our backyard at Colorado National Speedway, May 23rd. The race is at 6 p.m. Tickets start at just $15-16, so there's no excuse not to go and cheer on our hometown kid. He's been racing since 8 years old.
Yeah.
Driving little cars on dirt, and now look at you. It's absolutely incredible. And I love you've got, your mom's here, your dad's behind you, your grandfather. You have a lineage of racing in your family, and Scott's Automotive. It was just kind of born in you and bred in you that you better be driving cars or working on cars, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Dad did so. Did you love going to those as a kid? Is that kind of like, I want to do that when I grow up? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I remember he was running the sprint car stuff when I was just a little guy, and I would throw a fit if I had to stay home. And
come on, Mom.
And I couldn't go with my dad to the races. Like, I'd throw a huge fit, and I remember I'd fall asleep sitting on top of the race car trailer watching the races, and playing in the mud next to the trailer with my little race cars. And
that's awesome. I think I could say I'm proud of you as a Rocky Mountain graduate. Obviously a lot older, many years before Scotty here graduated from high school, but I think it's really cool to see what you're doing coming from Fort Collins. You're well on your way here. I do have to ask you, I want the inside scoop here because, there are some maybe small-minded people out there that think, oh, in NASCAR you just turn left and it's 2 hours long and that's it. The endurance that these guys go through, you have to train for that sort of stuff. Now maybe your races are not as long. You talk about dirt tracks, not quite as long, but you know what they go through. Just talk about the physical endurance it takes to be, a NASCAR driver.
Yeah, so I haven't fully done a main yet in the ARCA series, so I don't. I feel like I'm pretty prepared. The sprint car, it wears you out. You're only out there for maybe 20, 30 minutes, but you're hanging on. You're going through ruts and you have power steering, but that wheel is always moving. Yeah. Like it's crazy because the force pulls you over, it pulls you back. You don't realize how much neck muscles you use and leg muscles using the brake. Like in a sprint car, you're sitting straight up and down. You're sitting like this in the chair, and
cramping,
and you're pushing. The gas pedals are different. Compared to like an ARCA car. So I felt pretty comfortable in the ARCA car, a little more comfortable than a sprint car. It's just you're more laid back and a little bit more relaxed, but your arms are getting a workout.
Oh yeah.
It's not as easy as people think, So.
And I think the people out there that do think it's easy, I'm like, you have no idea what these drivers, your arms, your shoulders, Not to mention, obviously, NASCAR races are a little bit longer, but these ARCA races, I assume they're longer than you have done in the past. Is that the case?
Yes.
How long are we talking here for a race?
They can usually go, I mean, they can go to, 30 minutes to an hour. So.
And you're driving, not to mention 100 more. Are we topping 200 miles an hour? Is that NASCAR, or where are we at on that range?
So on a bigger track than Colorado National, yes. I don't know the speed at Colorado National. I'd imagine it's going to be around 100.
Yeah, which is crazy. Can you imagine driving 100 miles an hour for 30 minutes to an hour? Because I cannot. Not to mention turns involved. And then if you have to go to the bathroom, that's another story. We won't get into that.
Yeah, and your grip strength, you
Oh,
don't,
my goodness.
like my hands get locked up after,
I'm
you let
sure.
go of the steering wheel. You don't realize how much you're actually gripping and how much adrenaline does to keep you going through it. So.
I have no doubt, and I never will ever even attempt to do that. So much respect to you, Scotty. I love the hat. Before we go, we're a few minutes out here. You got to tell us about your website, because I went to the website. You've got all the merch there and stuff, and maybe get out a shout out to a couple of your sponsors, because I love the logo. Is SM for obviously Scotty Milan?
Yeah. So that's my racing logo. I got that website. We got all that stuff on there. We have a merch trailer at every sprint car race we go to, so we sell out on there. If the website's been kind of iffy, so if you
It works for me today, so.
well, if you need anything, you can always DM me on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll get you something.
It's easy to find. It's Scotty Milan, SCOTTY_Milan, MILAN 97. And go check him out. Instagram. He's got TikTok, all the socials. If you Google him as well, you're gonna find what you need. Scotty, I'm proud of you being a Rocky grad.
Yep.
Congrats on all the success so far, and go get them there at CNS May 23rd. We're going to be rooting for you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Best of luck. All right, everybody, go cheer on Scotty Milan. Thanks for joining us for this episode. We're running out of time, so we'll see you next time here on Colorado Conversations.